Hey everyone, Tuna here, back with the second part of my Momir Vig deck tech. We last left off going over the mana base, and today I'm going to go over the non-creature spells, which aren't that many since this deck is mostly creatures. So first let's go over the artifacts. And first we have Soul Ring, which is, in my opinion, probably the best card in EDH since it allows you to ramp at a ridiculously high speed. So it taps for 2 colors, costs 1, which is just obscene, and should be in any commander deck, in my opinion. Next we have Lightning Greaves. So Lightning Greaves is also one of those cards that's pretty much good in any commander deck as an equipment that casts for 2 and equip for 0, and it gives a creature haste and shroud. This is great to put in your commander, especially Momir, since if Momir could stick and we could put this on him, the game is pretty much over, since once you start tutoring with Momir over and over again and they can't deal with it, you get gained so much card advantage, it's ridiculous. Next we have Crystal Shard, and Crystal Shard is another useful artifact. It costs 3 to cast, 3 colors to cast, and for either 3 colorless or 1 blue, and you could tap it, and you could return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. So this is great if your opponent taps out, you could cast this and tap it and bounce their threat to their hand, or their, any sort of threat they have on the board into their hand, or any creature threat. Or it's also useful because this deck is this deck excels at playing spells over and over again, so you could bounce your own creatures if you want to, and not pay the 1, and just cast your creature again to get another free trigger off a Momir and tutor for another card. Next we have Cloudstone Curio. So this is a unique one. So it's 3 colors, and it says, whenever a non-artifact permanent comes into play under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. So this is a card you could use in conjunction with a few other cards to go infinite, but that's sort of frowned upon. So other ways you could use it are just recasting your creatures. So you play a really cheap creature, you could bounce another creature back to your hand, and then using lots of mana, you could play that creature and then bounce another creature over and over again to just keep getting triggers off Momir, which is basically what this deck is about. And our last artifact we have is Birthing Pod. So most people should know about this one, but it's 3 colorless and 1 green Phyrexian mana. You could activate its ability for 1 and a Phyrexian mana and tap. And you sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus 6 sacrifice creatures converted mana cost. Put that card into the battlefield and shuffle. And you can only activate this as a sorcery. So this is really good since it's another way to tutor for cards if you can't get Momir to stick or he's dead or whatever. This is a really good way to tutor for cards or for creatures, which is what this deck is all about. Next we'll go on to the enchantments. And so our first enchantment we have here is Earthcraft. And this is a really good one. So it's 1 and a green, and it says tap an untapped creature you control to untap target basic land. So this is useful in this deck since I have a ton of this little weenie creatures. So once I have a bunch of creatures out, I can just tap them to generate large amounts of mana, which is good in any commander deck. And next we have Rhystic Study. And Rhystic Study costs 2 and a blue, and it's another one of those cards that's pretty much good in any commander deck with blue in it. And its ability is whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. So basically, your opponent's spells just you just add 1 to all their cost, and if they don't do that, then you just draw cards off all their spells that they cast, which is just amazing. So either of those ways are really useful for you. So it gives your opponent a choice, but usually that's not a good thing. But in this case, both the choices your opponent have are beneficial to you either way. And our next enchantment we have here is Equilibrium, and it's 1 double blue. Whenever you successfully cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 to return target creature to its owner's hand. So this goes along with the bounce theme we have. So every time you play a creature, which is pretty much every turn, or if not more than once a turn, you just add another 1 color to its mana cost to bounce your opponent's creatures, or as I said before, you can just bounce your own creatures if they have nothing on the board and replay them, which is amazing. And probably the best enchantment in this deck, or at least in this, in this deck, is Alluring. So it's 2 green, and its ability is any player may play a creature card with total casting cost 3 or less whenever he or she could play an instant cost without paying its mana cost. So this is extremely good in our deck because we have a ton of creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less, but most EDH decks don't, since EDH is a slow format and most people run lots of big beefy creatures, since that's how you win. But this deck, I have a bunch of little creatures, so it's one of those cards where it has an equal effect to every player, but since our deck is built for it, it just is extremely beneficial for us, whereas our opponents can't really take advantage of it. And then casting creatures for free, then getting free tutor triggers off of Momir is just ridiculous. So now we're going to go on to the instance, and our first instant we have here is Worldly Tutor, and Worldly Tutor is a 1 green, search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, and shuffle your library, put it back on top of your library. So it's an instant, so it's very useful just to put it at our end step, tutor for a creature, and it's one of those cards that is a substitute for Momir's ability in case we can't get it out, or in case we just need another tutor, so it's very useful. And then the instant we have here is Cyclonic Rift. So Cyclonic Rift is one of the newest additions to the deck, Return to Ravnica. It's a very versatile card. You could play it for 1 and a blue to return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Or what we're going to play it like 99% of the time is for its overload cost, 6 and a blue, to return all non-land permanents you don't control to your owner's hand. So basically, once you have a huge board presence with all our like weenie creatures, you could cast this, and basically the game is over, since your opponents have to replay all their spells, and you already are so much more ahead of them on the board that they just can't come back. And then we have another instant here. We have Frozen Grip, and this is another one of those cards that's sort of a staple EDH card, good in almost any EDH deck. 2 and a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And that's pretty good by itself in EDH, since there's a ton of artifacts and enchantments, but what really makes this card good is split second. So basically you could cast this and players can't respond, so this is good for destroying things like Sunset's Divining Top. You cast it, they can't tap it and put it on top of their library. And there's a lot of other things where this is good against, but this is a very good card. And then we have some counters in the deck. We have Spell Crumple, which is good for countering commanders, since if you counter a spell, that spell goes on the bottom of its library instead of the graveyard, which is very useful, since when commanders go in the graveyard, their opponents can or their owners can choose to put them in the command zone instead. So this is a way to have your opponents not have access to their commanders. And then we have Void Slime. So Void Slime is very good and versatile, since it can target a spell, or it can target an activated ability or a triggered ability. So things like Momir's ability can be countered, like if we were playing a mirror Momir deck, or if someone taps an artifact for some sort of effect, we could counter it with this, which is very useful. And then we also have here Beast Within. So it's another card that sort of breaks the color pie a little bit, since it's a green destroy target permanent, but you can also destroy creatures, which green doesn't really have. But it gives them a 3/3. So it's just a good versatile card, the card that should probably be in most EDH decks. Next we're going to go on to the sorceries, and our first sorcery we have here is Regrowth, and Regrowth is 1 and a green. Bring any card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is good, since green doesn't have that much recursion, or blue, so it allows us to it gives our deck some versatility and recurring some cards that we want back from our graveyard. And next we have Rye Replication, and this is another card I think that should probably be in any blue EDH deck, or for the most part. And it's 2 double blue, and you could copy target creature, or you could pay its kicker cost for 5 and put 5 copies of that creature. So if you copy a creature with enter the battlefield abilities, it's ridiculous. If you copy something, just a giant creature with an enter the battlefield ability, then the game is pretty much over. This card is amazing. Next we have Tooth and Nail. This is great in our deck since it goes along with the creature theme. We could cast it for its normal cost and put 2 creature cards from our hand into the play, which is very useful, since with Momir we're going to have lots of creatures that we want in our hand. Or we could cast 9 and just get 2 creatures from our library and put them into the play, which is very useful. And next we have Green Sun Zenith, and this is another one of those cards that's very versatile. X and a green, search your library for a green creature with converted mana cost X or less, put it in the battlefield. And most of the creatures we have are green. There's a few that are blue, but for the most part they're green. So this just allows us to tutor again, substitute for Momir's ability. This is a great card. Next we have Hurricane. So Hurricane's sort of a win condition you have. if you just have tons of mana and you just don't have a board presence, you could just cast this, sort of equal out the board. Since green and blue don't have too many flyers, I mean, blue has flyers, but this deck is mostly like green weenies, ground guys, so this sort of equals out the board. It's good in the deck. And then last we have Genesis Wave, which is an amazing card. It's just a fun card. If you just have a ton of mana, you just dump it into this, and pretty much get a ton of free spells. It's a great card. And then lastly, we're going to go over the 2 Planeswalkers we have in the deck. And our first one is Jace Beleren. And Jace Beleren's a 3 loyalty, 3 cost Planeswalker. +2 allows each player to draw a card. -1 allows target player to draw a card. And -10, target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So pretty much the third ability is pretty much never going to be used. But the first 2 abilities are good, since we could -1 him twice to have ourselves draw a card, then +2 him after that. And then, you know, -1 him whenever we need to, just to draw cards, just gain advantage over our opponents, which is very useful. And then last we have Garruk Wildspeaker, and he's a 4-cost 3 loyalty planeswalker. And his first ability is +1, untap 2 lands. His second ability is -1, put a 3/3 beast token into the battlefield, and -4 is Overrun. This is very useful, since I said before, untapping lands in our deck is good, since we have a couple lands that produce 2 mana, so we can sort of ramp with this guy more than most people. Putting a beast isn't really used that often. We mostly just use his untap ability, and the Overrun is just good for just winning the game. So this was the end of my video for non-creature spells in my Momir Vig tech deck. Stay tuned for part 3. There should be an annotation in the top left corner for the first part, and in the top right corner for the third part once that one comes out. Thanks, and stay tuned.